The first sound was a bell, faint, metallic, and wrong. It came from somewhere in the fog, past the hollow fence line that divided the living from the fields no one plowed anymore. Eli stopped walking. The dirt road was silent except for that bell, ringing slow, like it was calling something that shouldn't answer. He'd only meant to take a shortcut home, past the abandoned chapel, through the overgrown wheat that rustled like whispers. But now the mist pressed closer, swallowing the moonlight. The air carried the smell of rust and wet stone. Then came the voice, low, dragging, familiar. Eli, don't look back. He froze. The voice was his mother's. She'd been dead 10 years. The bell rang again, closer this time, followed by the faint clatter of hooves on gravel. But there were no farms left within miles, no horses, no people. Only the sound of breathing, not his own, just behind him. He turned. For a heartbeat, he saw them. Pale figures standing in the field, motionless, faces hidden beneath straw masks. Each held a bell, each one silent now. Then the world went black, the fog swallowing everything. Somewhere in that darkness, a whisper brushed his ear. It's your turn to ring. And just like that, the bell chimed once more. When Eli opened his eyes, morning light leaked through the cracks in his window, pale, cold, and colorless. His throat ached. His hands were streaked with dirt. He didn't remember coming home. Outside, the countryside stretched endlessly. Gray barns collapsing into the hills, fields yellowed and brittle under a thin sky. No one lived within a mile. The nearest neighbor, old Mrs. Kramer, hadn't been seen in weeks. He told himself it had been a dream. The fog, the bell, the whisper, all of it. A trick of exhaustion. He'd been driving since dawn the day before, returning to clean out his late father's farmhouse after years away. But the bell's echo hadn't left his head. It pulsed behind his temples, faint but steady, like something alive. Eli stood wincing as his knees cracked. His boots were still muddy, caked with wet soil. The same soil that covered his front porch in smeared footprints leading inward. He stared at them for a long time. There were too many, and they weren't all his. He grabbed the old rotary phone on the kitchen counter, but the line was dead, only a soft, humming static. Outside, the wind shifted. Something metallic jingled faintly. Far away. Not again, he muttered. Not here. His father had warned him about this land, told him never to come back after dark. Eli had laughed then, thinking it was just the old man's way of keeping him close. But now the warning felt heavier, older. He remembered the stories, the harvest bells. Local legend said they were used in the 1800s to guide lost souls home after plague swept through the valley. But some claimed the bells had learned the wrong kind of guiding, that they didn't wait for the dead anymore. They came for the living. He brushed the thought away. Just folklore, he said aloud, but his voice cracked on the word. In the corner, the farmhouse clock ticked, once, twice, then stopped. Eli walked outside. The morning fog hadn't lifted. It hung thick over the fields, muting the world. His father's scarecrow still stood near the fence, its straw hands rotting, its burlap head sagging low. But something about it was different. The head was turned toward the house. He froze. The scarecrow had always faced the road. Always. A crow landed on the post beside it, feathers slick with dew. It cawed once, sharp, human-like, and flew off into the mist. Eli's pulse quickened. He backed toward the porch, keeping his eyes on that twisted figure. Then he noticed what it held. Around its straw neck hung a small, rusted bell. It swayed lightly in the wind but made no sound. He turned and went back inside, locking the door behind him. His reflection in the window looked foreign, eyes ringed with sleepless shadow. The silence pressed in again, heavier now. Every floorboard creak felt deliberate. The smell of wet earth seeped through the cracks, thick and metallic. Then came the knock, soft, measured, 3 times. Eli froze mid-breath, another knock, slower. He swallowed, stepped toward the door and forced a shaky laugh. Probably a delivery truck, he whispered. But no one delivered anything this far out. He peered through the peephole. Nothing, just mist. Then a voice, low, rasping, like a whisper pressed against the wood. Eli, open it. It's me. His mother's voice again. He stumbled back, shaking his head. No, you're not. The knob rattled once, then stopped. Silence. Eli waited, listening. But the air outside was still. The wind had died completely. Even the insects were quiet. He stood there for minutes, or hours, he couldn't tell. Then finally, he reached for the handle, just to make sure it was locked. The metal was ice cold, and from somewhere beyond the fog, that faint metallic ringing began again. Distant, patient, and growing closer with every breath. Eli stepped away from the door, backing into the dim kitchen. His heart thudded. The old clock started ticking again, fast, uneven, wrong. He whispered to himself, voice trembling. They said it only rings for the ones who answer. Outside, the bell stopped. Then, a single sound broke the silence, the creak of the porch step, as if something had just stepped inside, and the front door slowly began to open. The door stopped halfway open, swaying slightly, as if held by a breath of air that didn't exist. Eli stood frozen, his pulse pounding in his ears. The fog drifted in first, a pale river of white crawling over the floorboards. Then nothing. No shape, no figure, just silence. He shut the door hard, locked it, and dragged a chair against the handle. For a long time, he just stood there, waiting for something to happen. But nothing came. Only the sound of that old farmhouse breathing, the faint groan of its beams, the click of pipes, the whisper of dust settling. Hours passed before he dared move again. The clock read noon, but the sky outside was still the same dull gray. He needed to get out. To town. To anyone. He grabbed his truck keys, but as he stepped onto the porch, the air changed. Cold. Still. The scarecrow was gone. Only the post remained, splintered clean at the base. Something moved in the wheat field beyond. A ripple, like someone walking just below the surface. He couldn't see who or what, but he could hear the faint chime of that rusted bell swinging somewhere in the mist. He climbed into the truck, slammed the door, and twisted the ignition. It didn't start. He tried again. Nothing. Only a single radio hiss, then silence. A voice came through the static, faint, distant, a man's voice this time. "You shouldn't have come back, Eli." He froze. "Who is this?" Static. Then, they remember. He ripped the keys from the ignition and stumbled out, breathing hard. The voice didn't follow, but he could feel it. Something watching from the fields, waiting for him to speak again. He didn't. He ran. By evening, he'd made it to the old Kramer farmhouse, 2 miles down the road, leaning sideways on its foundation. Windows broken. Door chained, he called out, "Mrs. Kramer, you home?" No answer. Only the creak of an upstairs shutter banging in the wind. He found the chain rusted but loose enough to break. Inside, the smell was rot and mold, heavy and thick. He coughed and covered his nose. The living room was covered in newspaper clippings. Every wall plastered with yellowed pages, old obituaries, weather reports, missing persons. He stepped closer. The names were all local, all people from the valley, and each obituary ended with the same line, handwritten in fading ink. They heard the bells. On the kitchen table sat a tape recorder, old and dust-covered. A note beside it read, "Play when you're ready." He pressed play. The tape hissed. Then a woman's voice, trembling, cracked. "If you're hearing this, they've already started. They come when someone breaks the silence. When the bells ring unanswered. Don't look for the faces. Don't answer the dead." A faint metallic sound followed, a bell tolling once. Then another, and then a whisper. "They're not just ghosts, Eli. They're what's left of us." The tape stopped. He dropped it, backing away. His name. She'd said his name. But Mrs. Kramer couldn't have known he'd come back, unless she'd recorded it after she was gone. He turned toward the window, and froze. Out in the yard, the scarecrow stood again. But it wasn't straw anymore. Its face was pale, its clothes soaked dark at the cuffs. It tilted its head, and the bell around its neck began to sway, soundless. Eli staggered back, tripping over a chair. The bell didn't ring, not once, but the air seemed to vibrate with its absence. He grabbed a lantern from the counter and stumbled upstairs, searching for a phone, a sign of life, anything. The hallway walls were covered in old portraits. Rural families. Blank stares, none of them smiling. One frame hung crooked. His father's face among them, standing beside Mrs. Kramer, both holding small brass bells. His breath caught. "What the hell?" The floor creaked behind him. He turned, swinging the lantern. Nothing. Only shadows stretching long down the corridor, then whispering, faint, like breath against his ear. "You shouldn't have left us, Eli." The lantern flickered. The air turned ice cold. He bolted downstairs, out the door, and ran into the fields. The fog was thicker now, dense, living. Every step crunched through brittle stalks. The ground seemed to pulse beneath his boots, as if the earth itself were breathing. He stopped when he saw them. Dozens of figures, half hidden in the mist. Some wore straw masks. Others held bells. Their hands were gray, dirt-packed. They swayed lightly in unison, like wheat caught in a gentle wind. He whispered, "Please." They didn't move. A voice rose among them, a deep, slow chant, old and cracked like wood bending under weight. "Ring for the living, ring for the lost, ring for the one who breaks the cost." The sound spread through the fog, hundreds of bells chiming at once, a metallic storm swallowing the night. Eli dropped to his knees, covering his ears. But the sound wasn't just in the air, it was inside him, rattling his bones. And then it stopped. He opened his eyes. The field was empty. His breath came in gasps. His hand shook uncontrollably. Something glinted near his boots, a small brass bell, half buried in dirt. His name edged faintly along its rim. He stared, trembling. Then he picked it up. The metal burned his palm, and a voice whispered from it, faint, childlike. "Don't let them stop ringing." He dropped it instantly. It vanished into the soil behind him. The farmhouse lights flickered to life one by one. Though no power lines had run here for years, he turned toward them and saw a figure in the upstairs window. A man, still, watching. For a moment, Eli thought it was his reflection. Until the man smiled. He didn't sleep that night. He sat on the porch, shotgun in his lap, staring into the fog. The bell's echo never left his head, a steady heartbeat of sound. By morning, the fog had thinned, but the fields were torn apart, earth split open in long, shallow trenches, as if something had clawed its way up from below. He followed one trench toward the back of the property, to where an old well stood sealed with a rotting wooden cover. The soil around it was freshly disturbed. Eli knelt, pried the cover loose, and peered inside. The darkness below seemed endless, and from deep within it came the faintest sound, a bell, ringing slow and wet, then another, and another, dozens echoing upward like something alive. He stumbled back, whispering, "No! No, no, no!" His voice broke the stillness, and the bells answered. By sunset, Eli was back inside, scouring his father's study for answers. He found a locked chest under the bed, rusted but intact. Inside were journals, leather-bound, filled with cramped handwriting. The entries were dated decades apart. The last one read, "The bells aren't for the dead. They're for those who hear them. The land keeps what answers. Each sun must ring again when the last falls silent." The handwriting stopped abruptly, the page torn at the bottom. Beneath it lay another object, a bell, polished and gleaming despite its age. He stared at it. His reflection warped in its surface. "Dad," he whispered, voice trembling. "What did you do?" Outside, something scraped against the door. 3 knocks, slow, measured. Eli clutched the bell to his chest. The voice came again, soft and familiar. "Eli, it's time to finish what we started." He backed away, shaking his head. "You're not him." The voice laughed, low and hollow. "Then who taught you to listen?" The doorknob twisted. The chair blocking it began to slide. Eli screamed, "Stay out!" The air shattered. Windows cracked inward. Every clock in the house began to ring, not tick. Ring, each one echoing the same bell tone he'd heard in the field. He fell to his knees, clutching his head. Through the cacophony, one whisper cut through everything. "You can't silence what remembers you." The sound faded as fast as it came. The house went still. Eli stood, panting, staring at the bell in his hands. It was glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. He knew then, the bells weren't calling him. They were waking him. Something had started long before he was born, and now it was his turn to ring. Night fell hard over the valley. No stars, no sound, just the fog rolling in thick again, swallowing the fields and blurring the edges of the world. Eli hadn't moved in hours. He sat at the kitchen table, the bell resting before him, its surface dimly pulsing like a living heart. The silence in the house felt wrong, not empty, but listening. He'd read and reread every page of his father's journal until the words blurred. The entries were fragmented, sometimes written in a shaking hand, sometimes not his father's handwriting at all. Each ended with the same symbol, a circle of 13 dots. They come every 13 years. One must ring to keep them buried. Eli looked at the bell again. Its faint hum seemed to deepen when he stared at it, like the metal knew he was trying to understand. He whispered, "If I ring it, will it stop?" The air answered, "No." He jumped, chair scraping loud against the floor. The voice came from the hallway, low, steady, human. "It never stops, Eli. It just moves." He grabbed the lantern and turned slowly. A man stood there, or something shaped like one. His clothes were soaked, his face pale and waxy, eyes clouded like river stones. Eli knew that shape. "Dad?" The figure smiled faintly. "It's your turn." Eli stumbled back. "You're dead. That's how the land remembers us. It takes the ones who stay silent. You broke the circle when you left." "I didn't break anything." Eli's voice cracked, echoing through the house. The figure's expression twitched. Disappointment, maybe pity. "Every son must keep the bells alive. Every son must feed the field." The bell on the table began to tremble. Eli shouted, "What do you mean, feed?" The house answered him. The walls groaned. Floorboards split. The air filled with the scent of wet soil and rot. He looked down. Dark water was seeping up between the cracks, thick with mud and something that shimmered faintly, like ash. Outside, bells began to toll in the distance, dozens of them. Faint at first, then louder, all in rhythm with the pulsing light inside the bell. His father's shade turned toward the sound. "They're calling. For me?" "For what you owe." Eli snatched the bell and ran upstairs. The steps buckled beneath him, splintering like bone. The sound followed, that relentless ringing, echoing through his skull. He slammed into his father's old study, breath ragged. The walls pulsed faintly, alive with shadows that didn't belong to anything visible. He threw open the desk drawers, desperate for something, a weapon, a map, an answer. He found a folded letter sealed in wax. The handwriting was unmistakably his mother's. "If you hear them, don't run. The bells don't chase, they invite, and every invitation must be answered." The letter trembled in his hand as another bell sounded outside, closer. He peered through the window. The fields were moving. The wheat rippled like waves. Beneath the surface, shapes shifted, hundreds, maybe thousands, walking in silence toward the farmhouse. Each wore a straw mask. Each carried a bell. Eli's breath hitched. "No!" He stepped back as the glass cracked. Tiny fractures spread like veins across the pane, forming 13 small circles. He turned. His father's shade stood in the doorway again, smiling faintly. "You can't keep the land hungry forever." The bell in Eli's hand rang once, sharp and clear, not by his movement, but on its own. The figures in the field stopped. Every head turned toward the sound. Eli froze. The fog pressed closer around the house, thick as smoke. Then came the footsteps, hundreds of them, soft and synchronized, crunching through the dirt. He ran. Down the stairs, through the hall, into the basement. The smell hit him first, wet earth and metal. The air was heavy, damp, almost breathing. Lantern light flickered across the basement walls, revealing old carvings in the wood. Circles of dots, bells, names etched beneath them. The final name, Eli Wren, he stared. His own name had already been carved there, waiting. "No," he stumbled back. "No, I'm not." The bell in his hand glowed brighter, vibrating violently. He dropped it, but it didn't stop ringing. The sound filled the basement deeper now, echoing like something massive moving underground. The ground shook, dirt fell from the ceiling. A low groan rolled through the foundation, not the creak of wood, but a moan, deep and alive. He ran for the stairs, but they were gone, swallowed by black soil creeping upward. The floor was turning into earth. Voices rose from below. "Ring for the living, ring for the lost," he screamed, covering his ears, but the voices grew louder, hundreds of them chanting in rhythm. The soil split open at his feet. Pale hands reached out, clawing toward him, each one clutching a rusted bell. He kicked, scrambled back. The hands grabbed at his legs, his coat. Bells clanged, sharp and discordant. He grabbed the lantern and hurled it. Flames burst across the dirt, catching the edges chanting turned to screams. The hands burned, but they didn't retreat. From within the fire, a single figure rose, taller than the rest, its head wrapped in straw, its body draped in tattered robes that smoked but didn't burn. The harvest man. It stepped toward him, bells dangling from its ribs, each one ringing with a voice, human voices crying, pleading, singing. Eli backed against the wall, trembling. "Stay away!" The figure tilted its head. Its voice was a dozen voices layered together. "You left the field unguarded. The bells must feed. I don't understand." "You do." Its hand reached forward, pressing against his chest. The skin burned beneath the touch. The sound of bells filled his skull. Visions flashed. His father standing in the same basement, years ago, holding the same bell. Tears streaking his face as he whispered apologies to the earth. He'd wrung it, he'd fed it, and now it was Eli's turn. "No," Eli screamed, slamming his hands against the figure's chest. "Take me, just stop the ringing." The harvest man tilted its head again. The bells on its ribs rang once more, and then it spoke, softer now. "You were already chosen when you were born." The wall behind Eli cracked open. A rush of wind and dirt swallowed the flames. He was pulled backward into darkness, tumbling through soil that felt like flesh, damp and suffocating. He hit the ground hard. When he opened his eyes, he wasn't in the basement anymore. He was standing in a vast underground field, roots hanging from the ceiling, the air thick with fog. Bells hung from every root, thousands of them swaying soundlessly, and in the distance he saw them, the figures, the dead. His father among them, Mrs. Kramer, faces he barely recognized from town. They stood motionless, each holding a bell over their heart. His father stepped forward. "Ring it, Eli, or the land will take everything." Eli's hands trembled. He didn't want to. He wanted to wake up. But the earth beneath his feet began to split again, dark liquid rising. The smell of blood and iron filled his lungs. He screamed, not in defiance but in fear, and raised the bell. "Stop." He brought it down hard, the sound echoing like thunder. The entire cavern shook. Every bell joined in, ringing together, deafening and endless. The figures vanished one by one into the soil. The fog imploded, sucked into the earth. The last thing Eli saw before the world went black was his father's smile, proud, relieved, and terribly sad. When Eli woke, dawn was breaking. He was lying in the middle of the field, dirt caked under his nails, the bell resting in his hand. The farmhouse stood silent, its windows shattered, smoke rising faintly from the roof. The fog had lifted. Birds sang again. He sat up, dizzy, aching. The bell was cracked now, silent at last. He thought he was free, until he noticed the scarecrow standing where the well had been. It wore his clothes. His boots, and around its neck hung a new, unbroken bell. It swayed gently in the morning breeze. Eli tried to scream, but no sound came out. Somewhere deep beneath the ground, the bells began to ring again. Slow, steady, patient, the cycle had started anew. 3 days passed before anyone noticed the smoke. A pair of surveyors, mapping the back roads for a new highway, found the farmhouse half collapsed and blackened with soot. The truck sat in the drive, keys still in the ignition. There were footprints all around the property, dozens, maybe hundreds, but no other vehicles. No neighbors, no animals. One of the surveyors, a young man named Turner, said later that the air didn't sound right. No birds, no wind, just the faintest metallic hum under everything. Like the world itself was holding its breath. They called the sheriff. By nightfall, the valley filled with red and blue lights, officers moving through the ruins with quiet unease. They found nothing inside, no blood, no body, no sign of Eli Wren, but in the fields behind the house, they found something else. A dozen small brass bells buried shallow in the dirt, each etched with a name, some old and unreadable. One of them knew E. Wren. Sheriff Landry bagged it carefully, muttering, probably some cult nonsense. Still, he didn't like how it felt in his hand, warm, faintly vibrating. He put it in his coat pocket and told no one. 2 weeks later, the sheriff stopped answering his phone. His deputy found him sitting in his truck on the edge of the same valley, eyes open, breathing slow, staring into the mist that had returned overnight. The deputy said he kept whispering something, the same phrase, over and over. They're calling roll. When they searched his house, they found a box under his bed. Inside were 13 bells. In the years that followed, the farmhouse was torn down. The land sold and resold until no one remembered who had owned it first. Locals avoided the stretch of road leading to the property. They said their radios cut out near it. Their compasses spun, and sometimes, if the fog was heavy enough, you could hear a bell ringing far off in the fields. They called it the Hollow Mile. Few people went there after dark, but once a year, on the night the fog rolls down from the hills, someone always does. A curious teenager, a lost traveler, a ghost hunter. The stories all end the same. A faint ringing, a voice calling their name, and then silence. A decade later, an article appeared online. True stories from the deep countryside you won't believe. The writer, some city journalist, had come to document local folklore. He'd interviewed the last old-timers who still remembered the tales. One name came up again and again, the Bells of Wren Hollow. Most dismissed it as superstition. A few got quiet and changed the subject, but one old woman, nearly blind, half senile, said she remembered the sound. "They ring for the ones who come home," she whispered. "They ring 'cause they never left." When the journalist asked what that meant, she smiled with cracked lips. "You can leave the land," she said, "but the land don't leave you." He laughed nervously and packed his notes. But later that night, when he was driving back toward the main road, the fog began to rise. The radio fizzed, cutting through static, and beneath it, he thought he heard a bell, then a voice. Faint but clear. "Turn around." He didn't. He pressed the gas and didn't stop until morning. When he reviewed his recordings later, he found something strange. The tape was blank, except for one moment, a breath, then a whisper that wasn't his. "It's your turn." He deleted the file and never finished the article. Spring came late to the valley that year. The fog stayed longer than usual, the ground damp and soft underfoot. From a distance, the fields looked peaceful again, golden wheat swaying slow under gray skies. But up close, you could see them. Shapes beneath the soil, half covered by roots and grass. Not bodies, not quite. More like outlines where something had once stood. If you listened long enough, you could hear it. A soft vibration under the earth, faintly rhythmic. Like a heart still beating far below. A group of hikers passed through once, years later. They didn't know the stories. They just needed a place to camp for the night. They found the well, sealed now with concrete, and pitched their tents beside it. The youngest, a girl named Marin, said she couldn't sleep. Kept hearing something metallic outside like wind chimes. The others teased her. But when morning came, her tent was empty. Only a small brass bell lay where her pillow had been, half buried in dirt. Some say the land's cursed. Others say it's blessed, that the bells keep something worse from waking. The locals don't argue either way. They just keep their distance. Still, on quiet nights when the wind dies and the fog settles low, people swear they can hear it. That patient, steady tolling from somewhere deep in the valley. No one ever finds where it's coming from. There's an old man now who lives in a shack on the ridge, overlooking the Hollow Mile. Folks don't remember his name, only that he never speaks above a whisper. Sometimes he walks the fence line at dusk, stopping every few feet to listen. When asked why, he says it's to make sure they're still sleeping. Then he looks down at the little brass bell around his neck, tarnished, cracked but still whole, and gives it a gentle shake. No sound comes out. He smiles sadly. Good, not yet. Years blur. The world moves on. But every story that begins in the deep countryside seems to end the same way. Not with screams, not with fire, but with silence. And somewhere within that silence, a bell waits. Epilogue. A grainy home video circulates online every few years, always posted by a different account, always taken down within hours. It shows a stretch of countryside road, swallowed in fog. The camera shakes. A man's voice whispers, "Do you hear it?" Then comes a faint chime. The fog thickens. A shadow moves across the lens, tall, uneven, wrapped in straw. The video ends with a single word, spoken close to the microphone, in a voice almost too low to recognize. Eli. And then, the sound of a bell ringing, one last time.